So if you want to capture great GoPro footage when biking, it's important to have the right settings. In today's video, I'm going to go through those settings so that you can capture the very best POV footage while biking. Now, what is POV footage, you might ask? POV footage is point of view, and it's that first person point of view. So it's footage where your viewer is going to feel like they're the one right there riding the bike. And this is really the best and most interesting way to present your content on a bike. You could use something like a helmet mount, or you could mount the actual GoPro on your bike, like on your handlebars. But if you do that, your audience doesn't really have a perspective to ground them in it. They're going to see your surroundings as you move along, but they're not really going to see the handlebars or any other part of your bike, except maybe a little bit of that front wheel. When you set your presentation up for POV, it's a lot more interesting. So today's video has two basic sections. The first section is how to mount your GoPro and what type of mount I recommend using. The second section goes through the key settings that I recommend setting on your GoPro in order to capture the very best footage. So if you want to get good POV footage while riding your bike, you need to have the GoPro mounted somewhere in the chest area. Now, there are a couple different ways of doing this. The first way is you could use a mount like Chesty from GoPro or a similar third-party one and mount it with some straps that go around your chest and have it right here. The second way to do it, and the way that I recommend, is to use a mount like this one right here. So this mount here is the neck holder mount from Ulanzi. And the great thing about this mount is it's made of a silicone rubber type material, and you can basically set whatever shape you want on this mount, and it's going to hold it and conform to that. This is a really comfortable material to wear around your neck. It doesn't rub, it doesn't cause blisters, any discomfort like that. I was riding the other day in 95-degree heat, really humid. This was still comfortable on my neck. And the way this works is it uses the Go Quick 2 mounting system. So if you own any of the other Ulanzi accessories that use that, it makes it really easy to clip and unclip this. You just clip it on, twist it into place. And if your GoPro's not already mounted to it, it's going to be the same type of mounting as other mounts. You've got the thumb screw here. And the key with this is when you're wearing it around your neck, you can adjust the angle of your GoPro. Once you've adjusted it, you tighten it in place, and your GoPro is going to stay in place there really well. And then to mount it around your neck, you push on this red button right here, and it releases one half of it. So then what you do is you put it around your neck, clip that back into place like this. Then you've got it all right here and ready to go. And depending on your bike and the angle you are with your handlebars, you can easily tilt your GoPro down or up. So now that we've talked about the best way to mount the GoPro, let's talk about the key settings that you need to set on your GoPro in order to capture that best quality footage. All right, so let's get these best settings keyed into your GoPro. First thing you want to do is make sure you're in video mode. And by the way, I'm going to be showing you these settings on the GoPro Hero 11 Black, but ultimately it doesn't matter which GoPro you have. The key to keep in mind is some of these settings may look a little bit different. You're not going to have some of the same menu options if you don't have the Hero 11 Black, but a lot of these same basic settings are available on any GoPro. So when you go to the video menu, it doesn't really matter which of these presets you select if you have the Hero 11. Ultimately, you can key in the same settings regardless of which ones you select. But I'm going to select full frame here, click the pencil icon, and the first thing we're going to set is the resolution and frame rate. Now, the reason I picked the full frame mode is right up here, the 8:7 aspect ratio. First of all, 8:7 gives you more of a full readout of the sensor, which is great. You're not getting that automatic crop right there out of the camera. You get to figure out later on how you'd like to crop it when editing. And secondly, 8:7 gives you more vertical resolution. So that means if you happen to have your camera angled up maybe a little higher than was ideal, you're still going to have footage below that shows your handlebars. But if you do the 16:9, you're going to miss out on some of that. It's going to be cropped and you're not going to have much flexibility later on when editing. So if you own the Hero 11, I recommend doing 8:7 or 4:3. But if you select 8:7, I recommend doing 5.3K 30. Now the 8:7 doesn't allow you to go any higher than 30 frames per second. And usually when you're doing POV footage for riding a bike, you're generally not going to have a lot of slow motion. If you do want to have slow motion, then you'll need to do 4:3 or 16:9, depending on how high you want to go. So let's talk about the rest of the settings here. So what I find with lens is I find that wide is generally wide enough. It does give quite a wide perspective, but if you do want to have super view, which is even wider, or hyper view options, you do have to go to 16:9. When I go there, you can see super view and hyper view are now options. But again, I don't recommend the 16:9 when riding a bike, because you're putting yourself at risk of missing out on that vertical resolution and potentially having your camera aligned wrong. So for hyper smooth, you definitely want to have hyper smooth turned on. And you will not have the boost option here, but generally that's going to be fine. In order to use boost, you will have to go to 4:3. And then when you go to 4:3, you can use boost or auto boost. If you're going to select any stabilization more powerful than the standard hyper smooth, then I recommend doing auto boost, because boost and auto boost do introduce a crop into it. And you don't want to introduce a crop unless you have to. So I recommend auto boost to not have that crop consistently. So the resolution, frame rate, the lens, and hyper smooth are kind of those big key settings. If you get those right, your footage is going to look good. But there's a couple other settings to really fine tune down here under Pro Tune that's going to really help your footage look great. Now on the Hero 11 Black, you definitely want to make sure 10-bit is turned on. 10-bit's going to give you the 1 billion color shades to work with, whereas 8-bit is only the 16 million to work with. Bitrate, you definitely want that set to high. Shutter speed, you can keep that at auto, unless you're using ND filters, which if you are, check out my video above on those for the details on the settings to change. For EV comp, I recommend doing -0.5. It's going to help your highlights not get blown out. It's going to preserve some of that detail that you can bring out later on when editing. Speaking of editing, for white balance here, if you are going to edit later on, I recommend keeping this at native. That's going to give you the most flexibility later on. If you're not going to do a lot of editing, then I recommend setting it at 5000 or 5500K. For the ISO min, I recommend keeping that set to 100. For the ISO max, I recommend setting that to 1600. And that's really going to be key if you're going in and out of woods like I was. You want to have that ISO max of 1600 so that it can boost the ISO only when it needs to. The GoPro is going to use the lowest ISO possible to preserve footage quality, but if you're going in and out of shadows, there will be times where it has to boost it. Sharpness, I recommend keeping that at low. You can always add sharpness later on when editing. If you keep it at low, it's going to make sure stuff isn't over sharpened, which is really important if you're in the woods where there's a lot of trees or a place where there's a lot of grass. I find that the GoPro focuses on those individual features, and it can look really bad when it over sharpens those. For the color, this is also going to depend on how much editing you're going to do later on. If you do want to edit it and really bring out the colors and grade that footage, then you definitely want to keep color to flat. If you're not going to grade later on, then I recommend doing natural. Natural's a good balance without having that oversaturated look. And for audio, I generally keep the raw audio off and I keep the wind to auto. If you want good audio of you talking while you're biking, then I recommend investing in something like the DJI wireless mic or the Rode Wireless Go. Either of those are great options, and I personally prefer the DJI wireless mic because I can hook that on and I can use the external recording feature in it, so I don't even have to have the media mod on my GoPro, and I don't have to have it connected to my GoPro. But then later on, I can easily sync the audio from my GoPro with the mic, and then I can keep clips that I want from my external mic while also having some of the audio from here if I want some of the sounds of biking, which can really add some nice intensity to the video, especially if you're doing some serious mountain biking. So there you go. Those are the best settings to get the very best GoPro footage when biking. Until we talk again, happy GoProing.